When my son Thomas dropped me off at Sunny Pines Retirement Community, he promised it would only be for a few weeks. "Just until we finish the renovations on the guest house, Mom," he said, patting my hand with that rehearsed smile I'd come to recognize. "Then you'll move in with us, like we discussed." I nodded, wheeling my single suitcase into room 237, trying to ignore the institutional beige walls and the faint smell of disinfectant that couldn't quite mask the underlying scent of, well, old age, I suppose. My name is Eleanor Winters. I'm 72 years old, and that was exactly 8 months ago. The first month, Thomas visited every Sunday. He'd bring his wife Diane and my grandchildren, Mia and James. They'd sit awkwardly in the small visiting area, the kids fidgeting, clearly uncomfortable around the other residents. Thomas would show me pictures of the renovation progress on his phone. "The contractor says, 'Just another few weeks, Mom. You'll love what we're doing with the space.'" I would nod, examining the photos carefully. There was something off about them. The same corner of a room shown from slightly different angles. The same paint samples held up against the same wall. But I said nothing. What mother wants to accuse her son of lying to her face? By month 3, the Sunday visits had become every other weekend. The renovation updates became vague. "These things always take longer than expected," Thomas would say, no longer showing pictures. "How's the plumbing coming along?" I'd ask, testing him. "Oh, you know plumbers," he'd respond with a wave of his hand, always finding new problems behind the walls. By month 4, the visits had dwindled to once a month. My calls often went to voicemail. When Thomas did call back, it was always when he was driving somewhere. Conversations limited to 10 distracted minutes between his office and home. I'm not naive. I raised 3 children after my husband Richard died when they were teenagers. I put them through college working 2 jobs, teaching elementary school by day and bookkeeping for local businesses at night. I knew what was happening. I just didn't want to believe it. One afternoon in month 5, I sat in the common room at Sunny Pines, pretending to read a magazine while 2 staff members chatted nearby, thinking I couldn't hear them. "That new resident in 237, one said. "The family never visits anymore, have you noticed?" "Classic case," the other replied with a knowing sigh. "Promise Mom it's temporary, then slowly disappear. Happens all the time." I let the magazine drop to my lap, staring out the window at the small courtyard where a few residents shuffled along the walking path. Was that my future? Shuffling in circles while my family moved on without me? It was later that same day that I made a decision. If they thought they could discard me like an outdated appliance, they were about to learn that this old woman still had some fight left in her. You see, what my children didn't know, or perhaps had conveniently forgotten, was that the 15-acre property their father and I had purchased in the countryside 40 years ago was still in my name. The property with the Victorian farmhouse they'd grown up in. The property that held the antique furniture collections Richard and I had lovingly restored. The property that their father's will had specifically left to me, not them, with the understanding that they would inherit it upon my death. The property that Thomas had been pestering me to sign over to him for the past 3 years. I remember the first time he brought it up. We were sitting in the sunroom of the old house, watching a summer storm roll in across the fields. I'd been widowed for nearly 20 years by then, but I'd maintained the property myself, hiring help when needed, but making all the decisions, overseeing all the repairs. "It just makes sense, Mom," he'd said, sliding a folder of documents across the coffee table toward me. "For estate planning purposes, to avoid probate. You'll still live here, of course. Nothing will change." I looked at the papers, then back at my son. He'd become successful in commercial real estate, something he never failed to remind me of whenever we discussed finances. He had his father's charm, but none of Richard's transparency. "I'll think about it," I'd told him, setting the folder aside. He'd brought it up again at Thanksgiving that year, and again at Christmas and on my birthday, always with the same rehearsed smile, the same pat explanations about smart estate planning. I'd resisted, not because I didn't trust my son, but because, well, perhaps I didn't trust my son as much as a mother should. Richard had always said Thomas had his grandfather's cunning. "Smart as a whip, but watch him," he'd warn me. "He thinks 3 moves ahead." I looked around my small room at Sunny Pines, the twin bed with its thin mattress, the single window overlooking the parking lot, the shared bathroom with Mrs. Henderson next door, who took precisely 47 minutes every morning to complete her toilette. My life had been reduced to this. On the wall, I'd hung a single photograph, Richard and me on our 30th wedding anniversary, standing in front of the old house. We were both laughing because the automatic timer on the camera had gone off unexpectedly. It was the last anniversary we'd celebrated before his heart attack 6 months later. "What would you do, Richard?" I whispered to the photograph. I could almost hear his reply. "The same thing you're thinking of doing, Ellie. Show them what you're made of." I picked up my phone and called my old friend Margaret. She'd been a real estate attorney before retiring 5 years ago. We'd kept in touch, meeting for lunch every few months, until I'd been moved to Sunny Pines, too far from our usual haunts for me to join her without a car. "Margaret," I said when she answered, "I need your help." The plan took shape over the next 2 weeks. Margaret came to visit me at Sunny Pines, bringing files and notes. She put me in touch with her former colleague, a sharp young attorney named Sophia Chen. Together, we drafted the necessary paperwork. I signed the property over, not to Thomas, but to an LLC that I controlled. Then I listed the property with a respected auction house that specialized in historic homes and estates. "Are you sure about this, Eleanor?" Margaret asked as we finalized the paperwork. "This will change your relationship with your children. Forever." I thought about Thomas's empty promises, about Jennifer's annual Christmas card, the only communication I received from her, about Michael's occasional phone calls from whatever European city he was living in that month. "What relationship?" I replied. "They've already changed it. I'm just responding to the new terms." Thomas didn't suspect a thing. When he finally visited again at the beginning of month 6, I asked him about the renovations. "Oh, you know contractors," he said with a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "But we're getting close. I'm thinking by Christmas you'll be settled in." Christmas? 8 months away. I smiled and nodded. "That sounds lovely, dear." I noticed how he glanced around my small room, never quite meeting my eyes, how he checked his watch 3 times during our 30-minute visit, how he didn't once ask me how I was doing, what I was reading, whether I'd made any friends. "Is there anything you need from the house?" he asked as he prepared to leave. "Any personal items?" I thought about the jewelry box that had belonged to my mother, about the photo albums spanning 50 years of family history, about Richard's beloved books. "No," I said, "nothing I can think of." He nodded, relieved to be spared an errand. "I'll call you next week," he said, kissing my cheek. He didn't. The auction was scheduled for the following month. In the meantime, I hired a service to catalog and photograph every item in the house. The Chippendale dining set where we'd shared thousands of family meals, Richard's collection of first edition novels, lovingly accumulated over decades, the antique Persian carpets we'd purchased on our 25th anniversary trip, the oil paintings from Richard's great-aunt, an accomplished if unrecognized artist in her time. I went through each inventory list methodically, noting provenance, setting reserve prices where appropriate. I was thorough. I'd been managing household finances for 50 years. I knew the value of everything we owned. Sophia helped me establish a trust for the proceeds, with strict conditions about how and when the money could be accessed. I also made arrangements with a senior living community, not Sunny Pines, but Lakeside Gardens, an upscale facility with spacious apartments, gourmet dining, and extensive grounds for walking. The kind of place that costs $8,000 a month. The kind of place my children had deemed too expensive when they'd been researching options for me. "We need to be practical about your finances, Mom," Thomas had said when I'd mentioned Lakeside. "We need to make your money last." My money, not theirs, not yet. The week before the auction, I received a strange call from my daughter, Jennifer. She lived in Seattle with her husband and their 3 children. We spoke maybe once a month, and she hadn't visited in over a year. She claimed the cross-country flight was too expensive, too time-consuming with her busy schedule as a hospital administrator. "Mom," she said, her voice tight, "I just got a strange email from some auction company about the house. There must be a mistake." I was sitting in the small courtyard at Sunny Pines, watching a cardinal hop from branch to branch in the single scraggly tree. I took a deep breath. "It's not a mistake, Jennifer. I'm selling the house and everything in it." The silence on the other end lasted so long, I checked to see if the call had dropped. "You can't do that," she finally said, her voice unnaturally high. "That's our inheritance. Dad wanted us to have that house." "Your father wanted me to have that house," I corrected gently, "and I've decided to sell it." But where will you live? What about the guest house Thomas is building? I almost laughed. Jennifer, there is no guest house renovation. There never was. Thomas moved me into this retirement home 8 months ago, and he has no intention of moving me out. That's not true, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. He told us... When was the last time you spoke to your brother about me, Jennifer? Another long silence. I need to call Thomas, she said finally. Yes, I agreed. I think you do. That evening, I received another call. This one from Michael, my youngest. Unlike his siblings, Michael had always been straightforward. Perhaps because as the youngest, he'd witnessed more of the challenges in Richard's and my marriage, seen more of the reality behind the facade of perfect family life. Mom, he said, his voice carrying the slight echo of an international call. Jennifer just called me in a panic. Is it true? Are you selling the house? Yes, I said simply. He was quiet for a moment. Good for you, he said finally. You're not upset? Why would I be upset? It's your house. Your brother and sister seem to feel differently. Michael snorted. Thomas has been eyeing that property for years. He keeps talking about how he could develop it, split it into parcels, build luxury homes. I'm surprised he hadn't already talked you into signing it over. I felt a chill. Thomas had never mentioned development plans to me. And Jennifer? I asked. Jennifer follows Thomas's lead, always has. He paused. For what it's worth, Mom, I think Thomas really did intend to move you into his place initially, but Diane never wanted it, and you know how he always gives in to her. I thought about my daughter-in-law's tight smiles during visits, how she'd never once used my name, always referring to me as Thomas's mother or the kid's grandmother, as if I had no identity beyond my relationship to her family. Are you okay, Mom? Michael asked when I didn't respond. Where will you go after the sale? Lakeside Gardens, I told him. I've already put down a deposit. He whistled. Fancy, good for you. I'll come visit next time I'm stateside. I believed him. Michael had always kept his promises, limited as they were. The next day, Thomas showed up at Sunny Pines unannounced. His face was red, his normally neat hair disheveled. What the hell are you doing? He demanded, not bothering to lower his voice even though my door was open, and Mrs. Henderson was shuffling past in the hallway. I gestured for him to come in and close the door behind him. Please sit down, Thomas. I'm not sitting down. You're selling Dad's house without even discussing it with us? That house has been in our family for 40 years, I finished for him, since your father and I purchased it with our money. But he seemed to struggle for words. What about the renovations? The guest house? I just looked at him. After a moment, he had the grace to look away. Mom, I can explain. There's nothing to explain, Thomas. You lied to me. You moved me into this place with no intention of ever moving me out. That's not... You haven't visited in weeks. You rarely answer my calls. The kids haven't been by in months. We've been busy. The renovations... Please stop. My voice was calm, but firm. We both know there are no renovations. There is no guest house. There never was. He collapsed into the visitor's chair, running a hand through his hair. Okay, he admitted finally. We weren't renovating a guest house, but we were planning to bring you back home, eventually. When? After the house had become mine in name only? After you'd moved all your things in and taken over every room? After I'd become too old or too ill to argue? He didn't answer. The house has already been emptied, I told him. The auction is next week, and I've already put a deposit down on an apartment at Lakeside Gardens. His head snapped up. Lakeside? Do you have any idea how expensive that place is? I do. That's why I'm selling the house. I'd expected anger, shouting, perhaps even threats. What I didn't expect was for my son to start crying. Mom, he said, his voice cracking. That house is all we have left of Dad. You can't sell it. For a moment, I wavered. The house held so many memories. Richard teaching the children to ride bikes in the long driveway, family dinners in the garden during summer evenings, Christmas mornings around the fireplace. But then I remembered what the house had become after Richard died. How Thomas had started assessing its value before Richard's grave was even marked with a headstone. How Jennifer had begun claiming furniture pieces. When the time comes, I want the dining set, Mom. how neither of them had offered to help maintain the property, but both had plenty of opinions about how I should manage it. The house is not your father, Thomas. Your father lives in your memories, in the values he taught you, or should have taught you. He looked up, tears streaking his face. For a moment, I saw the little boy who'd come to me with scraped knees and broken toys, looking for me to fix everything. "We can work something out," he pleaded. "Whatever you want. Just stop the auction." I shook my head. "The auction proceeds next week." "Then at least let us buy some of the items. Dad's books, the dining room set. Those things meant something to us." "They meant something to me too, Thomas, every day for the past 40 years. But I didn't see you offering to help maintain them when you moved me in here. I didn't see you concerned about where those family treasures would go." He wiped his eyes. "What do you want, Mom? Money? Is that it? We can pay for Lakeside. Between Jennifer, Michael, and me, we can cover it." "This isn't about money, Thomas. This is about respect, about honesty, about treating your mother like a human being with feelings and autonomy, not a problem to be managed." After he left, I sat on my bed for a long time, looking at the photograph of Richard and me. Part of me wondered if I was being cruel, if I was letting hurt feelings drive me to punish my children unfairly. But then I remembered Thomas's face when he talked about Lakeside's cost. Not concern for my well-being, but alarm at the expense. I remembered Jennifer's immediate assumption that the house was her inheritance, not my home. I remembered the casual way they had all drifted away from me after depositing me at Sunny Pines. This wasn't punishment. This was self-preservation. The day of the auction dawned clear and bright. I didn't attend. Sophia had advised against it, suggesting that my presence might make potential buyers uncomfortable. Instead, I followed along via updates from Margaret, who did attend. "The property just sold," she texted me around noon. "You're not going to believe the price." She was right. The auction was a success, beyond even my expectations. The property sold for nearly double what Margaret had estimated. Several of the antique pieces fetched small fortunes from collectors. Richard's first edition books went to a university library, which pleased me. They'd be preserved and appreciated. "Do you want to know who bought what?" Margaret asked when she called that evening. "No," I said after a moment's thought. "Let it all go." After the auction, after all the paperwork was finalized and the money was safely in the trust, I moved into Lakeside Gardens. My apartment there has 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, and a balcony overlooking the lake. I've made friends with several residents who, like me, have found themselves navigating the complicated terrain of aging in a society that often dismisses the elderly. One of them, a retired judge named Robert, lost his wife to cancer 5 years ago. His children had sold his house while he was still grieving, moving him into assisted living for his own good. "They meant well," he told me over coffee in the lakeside dining room, "but they never asked what I wanted. They just decided." Another new friend, Evelyn, had been a concert pianist in her youth. Her children had sold her piano. "It's too big for your apartment, Mom," without consulting her. Now her fingers moved restlessly over the tablecloth as we spoke, playing phantom melodies. We formed an informal support group, meeting 3 times a week to share stories, offer advice, sometimes just to sit together in understanding silence. Thomas hasn't spoken to me since our confrontation. Jennifer calls occasionally, her voice always tight, our conversations brief and strained. My youngest, Michael, who had been living in Europe and was largely uninvolved in the whole saga, visits when he's in the country. He seems to understand my decision, or at least respects it. "I brought you something," he said during his last visit, handing me a small package. Inside was a silver locket that had belonged to my mother, the one piece of jewelry I truly cared about, which I'd left behind at the house. "How did you get this?" I asked. I asked Thomas if I could go through some of the items before the auction. He didn't want to, but I insisted. I held the locket, feeling its familiar weight in my palm. "Thank you, Michael," he shrugged. "It's yours. It should be with you." Such a simple concept, yet one that had eluded my other children entirely. Some people might think I was harsh, that I should have forgiven my children, particularly Thomas, that I should have given them another chance. But here's what I know. Respect isn't an entitlement. It's earned. And once broken, trust is very difficult to rebuild. I've lived a long life. I've loved deeply. I've lost profoundly. I've made mistakes and learned from them. I've earned the right to decide how I spend my remaining years and with whom. The money from the sale will cover my expenses at Lakeside for the rest of my life, with enough left over for medical emergencies. I've arranged for the remainder to be divided equally among my grandchildren when they turn 30, with the stipulation that they must have demonstrated care and respect for their elders. This stipulation wasn't spite, it was hope. Hope that the next generation might learn what their parents had not. Last week, I received an unexpected visitor. Mia, Thomas's daughter, now in her first year of college. She stood hesitantly in the entrance of Lakeside Gardens, clutching her backpack, looking lost until she spotted me in the lobby. "Grandma," she said, approaching cautiously as if unsure of her welcome. "Is it okay that I came?" I hugged her, feeling the familiar shape of her shoulders, so like her grandfather's. "Of course it's okay. I'm delighted to see you." We sat across from each other in the Lakeside Gardens cafe, Mia fidgeting with her coffee cup. "Dad doesn't know I'm here," she admitted. "He still gets upset whenever anyone mentions you or the house." "And how do you feel about it?" I asked. She considered the question seriously, reminding me of the thoughtful child she'd been before adolescence had briefly turned her sullen and distant. "I miss the old house," she said finally. "Christmas won't be the same without it." "No," I agreed. "It won't." She looked up, her eyes, so like her grandfather's, meeting mine. "But I understand why you did it, Grandma. Dad was wrong. They all were." "It wasn't about being right or wrong, Mia. It was about being seen, being valued." She nodded. "They treated you like you were already gone, like you were just waiting around." The insight startled me. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. I reached across the table and took her hand. "Would you like to come for dinner next week? I'm not the cook I once was, but the restaurant here makes an excellent pot roast." She smiled. "I'd like that." As she was leaving, she turned back. "Grandma? The house? I know a family bought it. I drive by sometimes. They have kids. The little girl plays on the tire swing that Grandpa put up for us." I felt a tightness in my chest. Not quite pain, but something close to it. "That's good," I said. "Houses should have children in them." As I watched her leave, I thought about Richard, about what he would have made of all this. I think he would have been sad but not surprised. He always said that character reveals itself in times of stress and change. I've learned that it also reveals itself in how we treat those who can no longer serve our immediate needs, in how we honor or dishonor the people who raised us. Last night, I had dinner with Robert and Evelyn in the Lakeside dining room. Robert's son had finally called after months of silence, awkwardly inviting him to Thanksgiving dinner. Evelyn's daughter had found a digital piano that would fit in her apartment, not the same as her concert grand, but a thoughtful compromise. "Small steps," Robert said, raising his glass in a toast, "to children remembering we exist. To remembering our own worth," Evelyn added. I raised my glass with them. "To new chapters." Yesterday, I received a letter from Thomas. The first communication in 6 months. It was brief, just a few lines. "Mom," he wrote, "I understand now what you were trying to teach us. It shouldn't have taken losing the house to learn this lesson. I'm sorry. Not just for the house, but for everything. For not seeing you as a person. For treating you like a problem instead of my mother. If you're willing, I'd like to visit, just to talk." I haven't decided if I'll see him. Trust, once broken, is difficult to rebuild, but not impossible. And I think about Richard again, about what he might advise. I can almost hear him. "Everyone deserves a second chance, Ellie. Not a third or fourth, mind you, but a second." Perhaps he's right. Perhaps there's still time for Thomas to learn what really matters. Perhaps there's still time for healing, or perhaps not. The choice, for once, is entirely mine. This isn't a story about revenge, though it might seem that way. It's a story about boundaries, about standing up for yourself, even when, especially when, those who should support you have let you down. It's a story about remembering your worth, even when others have forgotten it. They left me alone at a retirement home and thought that was the end of my story. They were wrong. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. And I'm the one writing it. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the courage to say, "I deserve better than this." And sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children is the lesson that actions have consequences, that respect matters, that we are never too old to stand up for ourselves, even if that means selling their inheritance.